Hello and welcome to the Toledo According to podcast. I'm Riley Runnells, assignment editor of the Toledo City Paper, and I will be interviewing some of Toledo's most influential and impactful residents as they walk us through what Toledo means to them. Every episode will feature a new guest talking about their favorite Toledo attractions, businesses, restaurants, and experiences, with the hope of our audience learning more about the guest and finding more gems of Toledo.
My name is Khaled Elwardany. I grew up in Oregon, actually. Went to high school there, went to school at Ohio State, and then came back to Toledo for law school. That was like 2015, or I guess that's when I graduated. But obviously I lived in Toledo that time. I moved downtown towards the end. So then I started working at the Lucas County Prosecutor's office. And so I lived downtown doing that for probably like 7 years.
Nice.
So yeah, living downtown was fun. Sometimes get a little hectic, but
for sure.
Yeah. And then, so I worked at the Lucas County for 8.5 years. I actually just left just like a month ago. And now I work at the City of Perrysburg Prosecutor's Office.
Nice.
Yep.
Well, I am a Perrysburg resident myself,
Okay.
so that's cool for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, talk a little bit about what your job entails as a prosecutor.
So, in Lucas County, it was all felonies.
Mm-hmm.
So the range of, low level, like drug possession, all the way up to homicide. So it's pretty intense at times. Sometimes, you have cases that are a little bit easier to deal with. And then obviously with the murder cases, it's much more stressful and, just intense,
For sure.
Dealing with the families and, or other victims of certain things. So it's interesting. Every day is something different. You meet a lot of different types of people, dealing with like your scientists and stuff that do the DNA. So it's very interesting, but it's also very stressful, and you got to work weekends and things like that. So but it can be rewarding too. Getting justice for victims who were just in the wrong place, wrong time, or just trying to have a good time, and then somebody, for whatever reason, did what they did. And so, that's when you feel good, is when you can get the right result for people, even with defendants, helping them out and maybe giving them a chance that they wouldn't have had otherwise.
Right.
Depends on the circumstance, if that's, the appropriate thing to do. Now at Perrysburg, it's misdemeanor. So it's like a lot of traffic stuff,
mm-hmm.
and, thefts and things like that. So
Right.
It's not as intense. But you can kind of maybe try and stop from people committing committing felonies, or maybe you can, get the people to help, or, maybe help them get their license back, or, something like that. So it's a little bit different, but still the same kind of stuff
For
at
sure.
the end of the day.
Yeah. And that's awesome that it's fulfilling work.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, that's, what more could you ask for with a job?
Exactly.
So I'm going to start off with kind of a hard question.
Okay.
So tell me the place in Toledo that you're the most proud of.
That one's actually kind of easy for me in a way. My grandfather he's passed away now, but he had done a lot for the community during when he was alive, I should say. He immigrated from Lebanon in, I think it was the 40s or something, or something like that. And that's when he met my grandma, and they moved from Iowa to Toledo.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a bar over on the east side. It was called the Pastime Bar.
Mm-hmm.
And then he had a lot of property around town that he, rent out, stuff like that. He had it was like a vending machine business. That was like his main thing, was having a vending machine business. And so over on Main Street, and recently right in front of the Wendy's, they renamed Main Street John Shausher Way.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, so it's pretty cool to see that every morning when I'm driving to work, to see that reminder of him,
right.
Knowing his shop's right down the street.
Oh, that's so sweet.
All that stuff. So yeah, that's probably my proudest area.
Yeah. Of course. Yeah, that's amazing. Kind of switching gears a little, the best meal that you've ever had in Toledo was where, and what did you eat? Oh, maybe this was the harder one.
That's tough. Well, yeah, that one's tough, because I've had, like you have places like Beirut that's
mm-hmm.
been around forever. That's amazing. Like we've gone there as a family, like all the time. But then like Kango.
Yeah.
I love Kango. I could probably spend $100 there by myself just eating fish and,
right.
No drinks or anything. So, man, besides those two places, it's got to be between one of those two places. I guess gun to my head, I would probably pick Kango.
Yeah.
What
do you like to eat there?
It's called Madai. It's a whitefish, and it's like putting butter in your mouth. Like it's not. When I ever tell people about it, I was like, it's like the least fish tasting fish that you can have. And even like it's called like yakitori. I don't know if you're familiar, but the stuff on the grill is all really good. They have this wasabi relish. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I wish I could bottle it and take it with me and put it on everything. It's that good. So.
Honestly, I know. Yeah. I've left some of Kango's restaurants speechless after some of those meals. They're incredible.
Yeah.
Tell me what your favorite annual event is locally.
Honestly, opening day.
Yeah.
Probably.
At the Mud Huns?
Yeah. It's like every year it's always a good time, even though it always rains.
Right.
It's still fun, and you see a lot of people. It's almost like, not want to call it like a high school reunion, but it's like, you see a lot of people that from like everywhere, from either work or school or like growing up.
Community reunion for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Tell me a business that Toledo needs but doesn't have.
If you'd ask my wife, it would be Wawa.
Yeah.
The gas station. Top Golf would be cool.
Yeah. That would be amazing.
In a couple different cities, and even if you don't like golf, you can kind of go and have fun and hang out and, still hit a couple balls and have a good time. Yeah,
for sure. Toledo has a lot of local art and architecture. I'm wondering what your favorite piece of local art or architecture would be.
The Pythian Castle has always stood out to me. Yeah. Because it's called a castle.
Right.
And it's just in middle of downtown.
Yeah.
So I'd say that's pretty cool. I mean, a lot of the buildings downtown are, at least the older ones, like the courthouse and stuff like that. And that's probably one of them too, having to go work there.
For sure.
Every day. But it always felt like it was important. Yeah. Like the building itself. So it was always, it always kind of made you this maybe sounds corny, but you get into the zone. Like, all right, I'm in a real courthouse.
Right.
There's other places you go in and they're just like a square building.
For sure.
And it's just it doesn't really feel like it's a courthouse. And that, I'd say the whole aesthetic of it is probably one of the cooler places.
Yeah, definitely.
And obviously you have the museum. Just the building itself is cool, but
and packed full of so many amazing art pieces.
Exactly. Yeah.
Where in Toledo do you find that you're most calm?
I used to take my dog when I lived downtown, just walking down. It's close to Promenade, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, Summit Street.
Yeah, just walking down by the river. It was always nice and calming because it was, you hear the water. Yeah. And I feel like everybody that runs or bikes down there is very respectful of the space.
For sure.
Everyone's very polite, and no one's making it messy. And the city, I think, does a good job of keeping it clean too. So
yeah, definitely. And it's under some construction too, so it's already going to be so much better when it's done.
Exactly.
And you kind of talked about Summit Street and going over there by the park, but what is a street that you drive on or walk on most often in the area?
Probably Adams Street.
Yeah.
Since I worked on Adams Street and I lived next to La Prensa, the Hispanic newspaper. My uncle used to have a law office in the building, and he's also passed away. And so I made it into an apartment. And so, walking up and down Adams Street, all the time. And then for work, all the lunch spaces that are on, just right off of Adams Street.
Yeah.
I just went to Don Juan with a friend today. So, I would say, probably Adams Street. I mean, it's
sure.
Even when I'm driving through, I usually cut down Adams just because I'm just used to it.
Yeah. And it's fun to go down and see all the new places popping up. Yep. And it's great. And tell me about the best time that you ever had in Toledo and what you were doing.
We went to Monster Jam. And a group of friends from law school. We all went just as something fun to do.
Yeah.
And that was a really good time. I think of opening days, those times, I couldn't tell you which year,
Right.
But, I guess I don't know if it's necessarily I can think of one specific time, but I guess going to a walleye or something at the Huntington Center with a group of friends is probably,
Definitely.
that type of thing. Yeah. Whether it was a walleye game or something different.
It's a pretty loaded question when
Yeah.
you've lived here for so long. What is one thing that you've always meant to do in Toledo, but you haven't yet?
I would like to go. I don't think I've only gone to the museum like a handful of times.
Yeah.
I mean, I've gone, and I can't think of anything that like I haven't done that I would like to do, because like you said, I've been here for basically my whole life.
Right.
But I would say probably maybe going to the museum more often. The last time I went was probably close to 10 years now. They had like a sneaker exhibit, like the history of sneakers.
That's cool.
And so that was really cool. And I'm kind of I probably have too many shoes.
A little bit of a sneakerhead.
Yeah, so it was cool to see it all that, and they have different, obviously the other stuff at the museum, but so that's probably one thing I wish I would do more of. For sure,
yeah. And if you could change anything about Toledo, what would you change?
The roads.
Yeah,
it's probably everybody's answer, but maybe just. I know they try, but it's like it just seems like every other road that you drive on has a huge pothole,
right?
Or some like it's like degraded, and you're like, oh, is my tire gonna pop going over this? Like that. Kind
it's like
thing.
A game avoiding all the holes on the road for sure.
It's like okay, this route I got to make sure I'm to the left.
Yeah,
so I don't hit this big pothole or something like that. So.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. We have had a few people say construction or different things like that, but sometimes when I see construction in downtown Toledo, I get excited because I think they're going to fix the pothole. So
like sometimes I'm okay with construction if it means everything,
right?
A short delay to long-term benefit.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then this is particularly interesting for you because obviously working in a legal world, if you knew you could get away with it, what would you do? Very, very broad question.
Yeah. Part of me is like, we'll rob a bank so I have unlimited money.
Don't worry, this is completely hypothetical, you guys.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that would be the only thing I could think of. And then that way I wouldn't have to you wouldn't have to work.
Right.
You could just,
just relax, retire early.
Feel like Scrooge McDuck laying on a pile of cash.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Where do you think the best view in Toledo is?
So I've been on the roof of LaSalle, and my friend, I think they lived at Standart, those apartments.
Yeah.
And both of those, you have the whole view of the city, and especially at night, we were up there, the one at Standart, when they had the fireworks downtown. So that was, you have a full view of everything. You can,
cool.
the business, or not the businesses, the buildings are lit up. And so I would say one of those two. I mean, I think they're kind of, almost the same.
Yeah.
For the views, since you're that high up. But I would say one of those two places give you the best look
for sure
of downtown. And yeah.
And when you're away from Toledo, what can't you wait to have when you get back?
I don't know. That's a good question. Maybe Barry's Bagel.
Yeah.
I guess, depending where I'm going, there's not a whole, not everybody has a good sandwich place that you can go to. And,
for sure.
For a while, there hasn't been a lot of delis downtown. They all kind of closed. And so, it's always
Barry's is definitely the
food.
Staple.
Yeah.
Yeah. What Toledo business will we most likely find you at?
It might be Balance. Yeah, I go to Balance a lot.
For sure.
I'm trying to think of maybe anything that's not food related, but that's probably
no,
as far as
sense.
Where you're going to find me, it's probably at somewhere where there's food.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
If you could give Toledo a new motto, what would it be?
That one's probably the hardest question you've asked.
Probably the hardest.
Maybe it's not that it probably wouldn't be good for the city, but welcome to Toledo. Watch where you're driving.
Very fair.
Yeah.
Very fair.
They probably won't want that one, but.
What is the most underrated thing in Toledo and the most overrated thing in Toledo?
I'd say underrated is probably the people. I know it's the Midwest, but everyone, you go to different cities, and I feel like everyone wants to watch out for each other. Not necessarily, get everybody in trouble, but, if someone needs help,
right.
I feel like people are willing to help a lot. When I lived in Columbus, it just seemed like you're in such a big city, everyone just kind of
does their own thing, is
just
in their own world.
Yeah, and I feel like in Toledo, everyone's a little bit more cognizant of others and, willing to like maybe help them out a little bit and that type of thing.
That's a great answer.
Yeah. Overrated? I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know. I feel like there's nothing that I can think of where people are like, oh, this is so great in Toledo, and it's really not that great.
Yeah. You can definitely skip that one if you want to.
Yeah, I guess I can't really think of anything where, because it's Toledo, people still have like their own, like, I feel like it's a lot of us trying to defend Toledo.
Right.
People that live here and like, hey, it's not that bad. Or, I think, well, maybe overrated is like, maybe overrated is not the word, but like I guess what we hear in like in the criminal field is like people don't feel safe coming downtown,
right?
Or don't feel safe in certain areas, and I feel like really at the end of the day, there's not like safety issues,
right?
Like, yes, if you go into certain places, you might be more liable or more likely to get yourself into some trouble, but
for sure,
I think that's any town.
Yeah,
any town you go to, there's bad areas, and I think especially downtown, I think there's not really. I mean, just in my in my experience, there's not like random things happening to people.
For sure.
Like generally, there's something that has precipitated something bad to happen. Obviously, things happen, but they can happen anywhere.
Yeah.
And so I think that maybe is probably the overrated, like the danger.
Yeah,
part.
The perception of danger for sure.
Yeah, and and being in Perrysburg now, I hear people say, "Oh, well, there's no way I'm going to downtown." And I'm like, well, just don't go to the out of downtown, like
right.
not go out of downtown, but like don't go to the places where there's not lights on, or like I think the police do a good job of keeping downtown kind of like its own little environment to a certain extent.
Yeah. What is something about Toledo that you always brag about?
I guess like when people say, I don't know if bragging's the word I would use, but like when people say there's nothing to do, I'm like, no, there's plenty of stuff to do. Like, right. So when people try and downplay where we live or talk crap about it, like there's plenty of good food places, there's plenty of entertainment things. It's not maybe how it used to be like 20 years ago when I was growing up, where it was like, okay, like maybe the zoo's not as nice as it is now, or downtown wasn't as nice as, like, it's definitely gotten a lot better,
right?
From when I was a kid. It's like people wouldn't go downtown for dinner all the time, and now it's like the place to go,
for sure.
Like with like Souk and Kango and like all the new places they've put down, like down here, it's like Poco Loco, like, oh yeah, we go there all the time. I mean, so I think that's probably. Yeah.
I think I had that same perception as a kid, especially. I was like, oh, there's nothing to do. There's nothing to do.
Yeah.
But then now living here as an adult, it's so nice because you can basically do anything. I mean, there's so much that you can choose from.
And there's not like, if you're in a big city like Chicago, there's not like a million people trying to do the same thing.
Right.
Like, it's spread out. Everybody can do whatever they want.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely appreciate that about the city.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, I want to know who the Toledoan is that you most admire.
I don't know, probably my grandpa, because of how much he did. And, I don't want to, I'd have to say my grandma too, because they were both, without her, there wouldn't be him.
Right.
They had 5 kids. So she was doing everything at home.
Yeah.
And it's, back in the day, that was what, women were kind of expected to do, but, in the 60s or whatever. But, I feel like both of them kind of, imparted on my aunts and uncles, like, you got to take care of each other. You got to help people. And like all of my aunts and uncles do jobs where you're helping somebody, like whether or not it's for the county or they work for the county, or like my aunt like does like hearing aids, or my one other aunt works for ProMedica. Like they all like have done things that is, my mom worked for the treasurer's office for a long time. And so like they all are either in like some public service job or something that's like focused on helping people. And like my aunt and uncle go overseas to do things like that. And that's all because like my grandfather and my grandmother imparted those values on us to like, take care of each other, take care of your community, be tolerant of everybody else. And, as a Muslim, like that wasn't always like, we don't always get that same, in return. So it was, my grandpa was always like, be tolerant, be accepting of other people. Don't just, stick to yourself. And, I think all of us, all my cousins, all my aunts and uncles have taken that from him and my grandma to, be good people, basically.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's lovely. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us. We so appreciate you having you on the episode.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Toledo According to podcast. Make sure to check out Toledo City Paper in print and online, as well as all of the publications under Adams Street Publishing, including Mature Living, Toledo Area Parent, Ann Arbor Family, Current, and Findlay Living. Find us on social media or connect with us if you have any story ideas to share.